Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome to Looking Ahead, a series where I break down and analyse the meta, what's happening over in Japan and the rest of Asia, and how it will impact our one. Today, we're going to talk about Miraidon EX. It just won the Korea TCG championships, and I'm just going to talk about how that might impact NAIC. Is this a deck which we should keep on our radar? We're also going to look at some of the new cards, some more Terra EXs that got revealed. Are they any good? As well as kind of looking at more 151 decks. Definitely better than most filler sort of sets have been, because there's quite a few interesting archetypes. It's going to break down exactly how the meta is started to evolve in some of the gym challenges that have happened. So, if you're new, please make sure to like and subscribe, and let's jump into the new cards revealed. So we've seen two of these Terra EXs, Greedent and Dragonite. And overall, these are kind of these bog standard, like very much in the middle Terras, not particularly very strong. Green is pretty interesting with first attack. For colorless energy, look at the top 3 cards of your deck and put those cards in your hand or discard them and draw 3. So in a way, quite an aggressive draw 6, which is quite interesting. And another attack does 210 for 3 energies, and during your turn, it can't use foolish rolling. Kind of a bit mid, but very interesting that draw sort of effect. Whereas in Dragonite EX is definitely a big step down. Like we saw some really interesting like Tyranitar and obviously from Charizard. This one here for Water Lightning, 140, flip a coin. If heads, it does 140 more. If tails, this Pokemon can't attack during your next turn. So in theory, doing 140 isn't terrible for 2 energies, but you're a stage 2. And in theory, on a coin flip, you could potentially do 280 damage. It's not terrible, but has some capability. If we had like a Flip Teeny or Glimwood Tangle, ways for you to reflip for you to do that, potentially could see some like play. I like how it's still Dragon types. I like how we've got Water Lightning still going on that theme of Dragonite, EX as well as V. It's just kind of a bit all right. Not exactly I'm blown away by these cards, but really good to see we've got some like vanilla sort of Terra. So still seen them, which is still all right. So I'll now talk to you about the Korean TCG League that happened this past weekend. It had 268 players, and it had the day 1, day 2, with top 16 in day 2 and 8 rounds on day 1. Like most tournaments that happen over in Asia, you can change your deck from day 1 to day 2, and that's exactly what some of the people did. Results which we got so far is the first place was Miraidon EX, which is really interesting to see. Miraidon EX is kind of going out there with some more popularity. Miraidon EX, I really like. I definitely it's more underrated. And you've seen it on my channel. I've covered Miraidon quite a lot the past couple of days. In second place was in fact Lost Zone Goodra. Really good to see Goodra still performing quite well. The rest of the top 4 from what I've seen online on Twitter, we saw Gardevior and Rapid Box, and the rest of the top 8 is some single strike Lugia, Mew, and some more Lost Box. Really interesting to see. We have seen some not as many Gardeviors out there, and Rapid Strike Box. This was in fact a change from someone who played at day 1 to day 2. So we're going to look at some of the breakdowns for the top 4 decks, the Miraidon, Lost Goodra, as well as Rapid Box. The ones that are being posted online, and really kind of see exactly how we have going to evolve in the Paldea and Evolve format. And this will really help introduce your understanding to NAIC testing. So this is won by, in fact, Stadium Park, who actually won the 2014 or 15 VGC World Championships, got top 8 at the Unite last World. So he's an incredibly good player and probably one of the best like Pokemon Master and doing really well in so many of the different games, like trading card game, video game, of course, and also Unite. Maybe Pokemon Go could be their next sort of outline. So we can see here, there isn't too many new cards. It's going more of the flapping build, which we've kind of seen a more resurgence of how Miraidon is working. So I really like the Zapdos in there, because the Zapdos really helps with your Miraidon and Raikou matchups. I mean, sorry, to do more damage to the likes of Tyranitar. Tyranitar is still incredibly powerful V Pokemon, and it does have 230 HP, which is kind of a bit annoying where like some Miraidon and Raikou can only really get to that 220 sort of threshold. So that Zapdos really tips over the edge, and Raichu meaning you don't need to discard as many energies to get those big one-hit KOs on the likes of Mew and Gardevoir EX. So I really like that sort of factor, and Zapdos can really help in those sort of matchups. Just played the Bravery Charm. I'm kind of off the fence with Bravery Charm. It's really nice in those situations where it can have like, Miraidon can have 270 HP or Raikou can have like 250. I like the capability it can do that, but I think we're in a big one-hit KO format and doesn't really save it as often as it likes. Does play the Squawk ability, which I really like in this sort of deck. It kind of goes to that more turbo sort of build. You're not really relying too much on the likes of Regieleki to do loads of damage, but having that Squawk ability is really powerful just to kind of like ditch your hand and draw more on the first turn of the game. 14 energies is kind of very common. We're seeing this much more in Miraidon between the 13 and 15, and I'm going more in the 14 sort of range. I think that's really, really powerful. Drapion as well, kind of being prepared to see, like, we're going to see lots of Mew, and also we're going to see Gardevoir. Drapion does get that power up through the likes of Fluffing, which can attach to it, so you kind of go that way to get those extra energies in play to kind of get those big one-hit codes with Drapion. One of the big cards here, you're probably looking here going, why on earth is there a Flying Pikachu? To be fair, they haven't really posted exactly why they have it. There's no Flying Pikachu VMAX, which can help Lost Box, but it's kind of like nice, guaranteed it's a free retreater. I can do that sort of on the flip coin, it prevents sort of damage and stuff like that. So I kind of like that sort of effect, but it definitely is a go big or go home sort of card in this list. The rest of it is very sort of standard. We're seeing quite a lot of disruption with 2 Ionas and 1 Judge. Kind of seen about between 2 and 4 sort of disruptive cards with disrupting the opponent's hand in sort of a Miraidon list, and quite a few switching cards, which is a lot more different than what we've been seeing in some of the other ones, where we've kind of seen a more high account of the stadium cards. No path to the peak, but they are kind of relying on like the likes of Raikou and a load of more like Lumineon, Squawkabilly, and Drapion. So that's probably the reason why they're not playing the path to the peak sort of build. But I still like this list, and it's really interesting. Miraidon is doing pretty well overall. Second place was this Lost Zone Goodra. Goodra as well, very, very interesting sort of deck, and we haven't really seen a load of hype around it, even in the rest of the tournaments over what's happened in Asia, and especially more in the big sort of city leagues that have happened over in Japan. It didn't really gain a huge amount of cards. Obviously, the return of Super Rod is really, really powerful with this deck, and Spiritomb kind of can help with sort of matchups against Mew and the likes of stopping over opponents' Lumineons and potentially even Raikous out there. So Spiritomb is pretty handy in that sort of situation. They are playing, again, quite a thick line of Goodra. We're playing a 3-3 line. Sometimes we see a 2-3 line or even a 2-2, but having a big 3-3 line is really important, I think, especially in this Goodra sort of matchup. Quite a lot of switching cards as well, because you want to kind of get those switching out to kind of get the confidence out to try and get that turn 2 Mirage Gate to kind of get that Goodra like slowing down the opponent as much as possible. Melanie, I really love in this list. That's probably why they're playing a count of 1 copy of Ultra Ball. Ultra Ball, again, really, really strong. I think to kind of have that guaranteed search for Goodra, because you're playing a high count of VIP Pass and the likes of Nest Ball. So you've got loads of ways to get your basics. But I always find it's much more of a struggle to get those stage 1 in a way, the VStar. So having that 1 Ultra Ball is really good to kind of guarantee that sort of effect. And Melanie as well to help that powering up. You've got lots of other draw factors in this list. 2 Lot Cities, I think, is very powerful. Because of the likes of Super Rod, a lot of people are reusing their Pokemon. They're kind of going down to maybe 1 Zacian. They're going down to potentially sometimes 1 or 2 Gardevoir EXs. So kind of getting rid of one of them by getting Lost City kind of can stop these some big powerful archetypes like Lost Box and Gardevoir to kind of reuse a load of their attackers. So if you get that pressure on there by Lost Zoning potentially 1 to 2 of their big attackers, you could really eventually win that sort of route. Not that many disruptive cards by playing 1 Roxanne and 1 Iona, but just play 2 copies of Boss's Orders. I really like this list. I think it's really fascinating to see Goodra kind of doing really well at some big size tournament. Potentially could sleeper pick for NAIC. If it's a list you are kind of considering of Lost Zone and Goodra, this is definitely one I will probably be picking up and playing nearly identical to it. And one of the last lists I want to showcase with this is this Rapid Strike box, which didn't really gain too many of these new cards. Obviously, it does play the more high accounts of Iona, but that is really it for the new cards from the set. Oh, and Squawkabilly. So I do like we are seeing some sort of change in this one. They're again playing the high account of the Intellium VMAX, because that is exactly the sniping capability. That's doing a lot of that, but only really playing Clara and Ender Retrieval to kind of get your energies back is very interesting sort of in a way with that. I think it's definitely Rapid Strike box. It's definitely a hit and miss. I think right now it may not be in the best sort of placement right now, pure on the basis that they are these huge Pokemon with 300 plus HP, with Gardevoir potentially going to be in that 20 to 30% at NAIC, and we're seeing the likes of Miraidon just did well, and Raikou is kind of a staple in most of the Turbo Lost Box decks. So it is definitely in that kind of like that dangerous, that rogue territory. Not saying that it's not a bad pick, but there are a load of answers out there like Gardevoir and Lost Box, which can really heavily go kind of tech against these sort of decks. I do like the Medicham, purely on the basis that you can do loads of sniping. Alakazam can move around the energy, and you can get that 1 to even like 3 turn like prizes, which I really love in these sort of decks. And Medicham is such an interesting card in there, especially really good in these sort of ping archetypes. Definitely something which is kind of keep on the radar. I kind of wanted to showcase it because it's such an interesting pick that do really, really well in these big tournaments. And I'd like to see the Rapid Box finally got a big result, which it has been desperately needing. So now I just want to look at what's happening with 151. There's only really some league events happening in Japan, and some of the decks are starting to form. We're seeing a lot more of these Mew EXs kind of popping up in quite a few more decks than I kind of thought with, and Arbok is kind of giving Darkrai that new lease of life. So I want to kind of showcase what some of the decks have kind of been evolving in the last few weeks, and ones that have kind of been performing okay. So Gardevior kind of gained a few more extra cards. We get Mew EX, and Mew EX is very, very good, because obviously you can copy any of your Pokemon's out there for the obviously necessary energy requirements. So Drifloon is really, really good in this one because you can kind of like copy Drifloon, make huge amount of energies on Mew EX and use that for those big one-hit KOs. Yes, you can kind of have the like of Zacian, but it's kind of nice to have that Mew EX as the other sort of attacking sort of option in there and can copy any of the Pokemon you have out in play. That's why Bravery Charm is kind of really good because you can reuse Drifloon. Still getting that 300 damage, which is still very, very impressive with Drifloon, and still getting those big one-hit kills in most of the decks. Stadium counts, very, very common to what we're kind of seeing. We're seeing 2 sort of stadium counts, and then we like to work out and power pad, try and have those 4 outs of kind of like bump Path to Peak as much as possible. Path to Peak is definitely become a lot more prevalent, a lot more popular, purely on the basis of how strong Gardevoir EX has kind of dominated this new sort of format because of reversal energy and they're playing the higher counts of Iona. Xenius Resolve is definitely an interesting pick we've seen in Gardevoir. This is definitely we're seeing a lot more in like the early Lugia list in the single strike version. And obviously Xenius Resolve is really good if your opponent has a lot bigger sort of bench days, but it has that guarantee to get to discard some energies out there or potentially the extra battle VIP passes. Definitely something which could potentially be considering if you're trying to. The thing is, it's really difficult to know exactly how to do testing for this sort of format because we're not going to have like Paldea and Evolve plus 151. We're going to have Obsidian Flames, then 151. So it's kind of going like reverse order to how it's released in Japan. So kind of take this with a grain of salt, but it's good to see exactly what decks are performing okay overall. Another one is Lugia VStar. Lugia VStar again goes with the Mew EX. Mew EX is really, really powerful because it can copy loads of the other sort of attacks which it has over in the field. Obviously not hitting for those important weaknesses, does have that dark weakness, so kind of like falls on the fray of the increase of Arbok and obviously Drapion V, which is going around there. But Mew EX is still really powerful to kind of get that copying effect of like Snorlax, Weirdeer, and the likes of Drapion, and then obviously Lumineon. So it's lots of other ways that can kind of copy sort of the effects up there. So I do like how Mew EX is a really good like contender in this one to kind of like copy any of the other attacks that you have out in your field. Darkrai VStar is definitely, I really love this card. I think it's really, really powerful and kind of seeing the resurgence of Arbok, kind of making the opponent get some more extra disruptive capability in there. Yes, you may be doing 150 damage, but that rockets and grab arm, which can shuffle it, which pretty much puts their Archeops and potentially other sort of key pieces of Gardevoir and Lost Box at the bottom of their deck, really difficult for them to grab, and then discarding potentially some more cards from their hand is really, really powerful. So it can kind of be this much more disruptive, much more aggressive deck by playing these high counts of Iona and Roxanne, pretty much making the opponent never have their hand and have that big threat of Arbok so they can constantly never get anything and not constantly in top deck mode. I think it's really powerful. I really like how Darkrai VStar has kind of risen to fame, I feel like, from 151. It gained like a bit more turbo sort of esque in Paldea Evolve, like the likes of Squawkabilly really did, and Iona really did help Darkrai kind of keep up in the late game, but obviously Squawkabilly really helps with its setup. But having Arbok now with the Rockets Grabber can really make it a lot more of a disruptive, much more like control-y sort of build, but still doing this big one-hit KO capability in the late sort of game. So I really like that with Darkrai. And to kind of finish off the kind of looking at this, we're going to look at Charizard EX. Obviously, Charizard is definitely a very, very powerful archetype, doing a huge amount of damage by kind of doing it for a little amount of entry as possible with the Charizard from Go, which pretty much means for every fire energy attached to one of your Pokemon, it counts as 2 fire energy. So this is really good as well in that sort of deck where you can pretty much have only 2 energy attached with Charizard EX and you're doing 330 damage. Very, very, very powerful effect. And obviously then discarding energies is not too bad. The likes of Magma Basement as well. I really like this sort of archetype. I think Charizard probably comes a lot more stronger when we get the Terra Charizard EX, the dark one. But having Charcadet and Armarouge with Magma Basement, kind of a way to move around loads of your energies, is really, really good. And the Bibberl is really powerful, especially to kind of stop some big hate with Roxanne and Iona, which is kind of threatening the field. Definitely something to be considering about. I think definitely Charizard is much more stronger in the Obsidian Flame sort of meta, but I want to kind of showcase here that give Charizard some love. I know it's always going to be very expensive because Charizard is always one of those collector's items. So unfortunately, TCG always gets that brunt of that sort of batch of the collector's tax. But I think Charizard could actually finally be back to be a bit more of a competitive deck. So this is kind of just rounding up. I'm looking ahead. Well, I'm glad we did see some more news of some new cards, some tournament results, as well as looking at, sorry about that, some of the 151 sort of cards to get more excited about it. Obviously, we're going to have NAIC in just a couple of days' time, which is really, really exciting, and definitely going to be covering a lot of that next week. So kind of looking at this, will Miraidon's result actually affect NAIC? Could we see a more increase in Miraidon EX now? Is it more like the path build I showcased a couple of days ago, or is it more one that Station Park did, looking at the higher likes of high counts of Flapping and kind of going with a Squawkabilly with having a Drapion and Luminion to really help with synergy? 151, is it going to change the format a bit more? We see obviously the likes of Mew EX and Arbok and the Rockets Grabber kind of perform pretty okay overall in the sort of meta. Is this kind of going to change? And with that being said, can Gardevior effectively be stopped? Mew EX is a really good secondary attacker in this sort of option with it as having one of those attacks, but it's kind of going to see exactly what can really change about it with Gardevoir EX. I really like the sort of effect. I think we're going to see a bit more of a change with Gardevoir, kind of going a bit forward, having like some Mew as another sort of attacking option in the deck, but I think Miraidon has a good sort of spot in NAIC. So if you've enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below. What deck are you excited about to see the change there? What results really surprise you? For me, definitely Miraidon Rapid Box with a big surprise game, top 4 at a big sort of tournament. And what's your favorite 151 sort of card? I'm definitely favoring more towards Arbok and really excited to potentially test a more stronger version of Darkrai VStar. So I'll be back in a couple of days' time showcasing more decks around there, as well as some looking ahead next week. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.